Okay, here we are at the custom data wizard from Interzoid, and we are going to learn how to create our own third-party data, which essentially enables us to leverage AI to pull external data on just about anything you can imagine: companies, people, places, products, markets, regulations, everything from the obscure to the everyday. We're going to define the fields that we want, and then we're going to save our configuration, and then we're going to take a text file and use this configuration to append the data that we want to that. So we're essentially creating data sets of just about anything we can imagine. And just to show how easy and straightforward that is, today we thought we'd create some World Cup data from external sources to append to a data set. And so let's go ahead and get through that here. There's some basic information. If I have a save configuration already, I can load it here, but since it's our first time, we're just going to start from scratch. Okay, and then here we simply describe in a general way the type of data that we're looking for. So let's say information about the 2026 World Cup soccer tournament in North America, just to be as clear as possible. And so the first thing we need to do here is define what data fields that we want. So these will be the output data fields that we'll create based on an input value that we enter. And so, for example, for a given team or country, we could say, for example, that we're going to want the coach name of the team. I'll add that. A second one, let's just say last World Cup appearance. And then maybe last World Cup appearance result. And I probably could have combined these, but that's fine. We can do whatever we want. And so you add another data field here. What else? Maybe best player. I realize that's subjective, but we can try that. And then again, this can be anything we can think of, but let's say what's our 2026 World Cup outlook. Maybe that'll just give us kind of a descriptive field about how they're expected to appear, since we haven't started the World Cup yet while recording this video. And that's pretty much it. The next thing we need to do is just save the configuration down here. And then I will just save that configuration. Instead of the default name that it makes up, I will just call it World Cup Data. There's a file there called World Cup Teams, but we'll just call it World Cup Data. I will save that. And now that configuration is saved, and I will go next. Now we could try a lookup value. For example, I can enter Argentina, and this is a lookup value that will get the data that we're looking for. This is the name of the team, so we can test it out. Okay, and then we'll click next, and this kind of gives us the topic that we entered, kind of a summary, the lookup value we have, and then the output fields that we're looking for. And then all I need to do is click run. And it's going to get that data. And then it comes back, and you can see the data here. Last World Cup appearance, 2022. Last result, champions. Best player, Lionel Messi. And again, now if I want to read the narrative result, World Cup Outlook, you can see here I can save these results, or I can go to a pretty view, and it's a little bit easier to read. One of the overwhelming favorites to win and defend their crown, aiming to become the first back-to-back World Cup champion since Brazil in 1962. And so I think this is the data that we're looking for. Again, we can play with this, we can add fields, we can delete it, whatever it is to get the data that we're looking for. And then when we have it right, we can use it for an entire data set. And I think we're at that point. So let's go ahead and close this. Now, one thing I want to show you, it actually generates an API here. So this is the exact API call. You, of course, need your API key. And your API key is something that you need to run any of this. For, in this case, you enter your API key up here in this field before we run it, because it does keep track of your usage, whether or not it's a trial or a paid account. And you can just take, based on everything we just configured, you could take this API and integrate it anywhere you want to get that same exact information that we just got with any input value. So in this case, you can see the lookup equals Argentina, but that could be Brazil, the US, France, Germany, England, the Ivory Coast, whatever the case may be. And this can be put into any place or anywhere that you want. And so the API is created for you based on what we've just done here. And that might be all you want to do, is just create the API from these sample fields. But we're going to go ahead and run a batch job. And we're going to go to, this is the custom data wizard.interzoid.com. We're just going to go to the enrich wizard. Okay. And we're here. And then it's kind of the, a very similar setup, batch data enrichment. We can take a CSV or a TSV data set and then use that to enhance with the data configuration we just created with the custom data enrichment tool. So we'll click Get Started. And then there's some pre-built enrichment functions that you can use. But we're going to go here, scroll all the way down, all these pre-built ones, and we're going to load a custom data definition. That's the one that we've just created, a configuration built in the custom data wizard. And so I'm going to click Load Custom Data Definition. Oh, by the way, here's where you put your API key. Load Custom Data Definition. And I'm going to get the input file that I've created. Click OK. Actually, I want, that's the configuration file. It's a JSON file. I want the CSV file that includes the World Cup teams. And I'm going to open that. Or actually, I did want that because this is the custom data definition. Sorry about that. So I'm going to click on Load Custom Data Definition. And that is the configuration. That is the JSON file. So that is the one that we want, World Cup data. So I'm going to click Open. And then it tells me here that we loaded this custom data definition from File. And here we've got coach name, last World Cup appearance, everything that we just put into the last file. So we're going to use that. Then we click Next. And then here is where we're going to get our data input file, where we select a CSV or TSV containing the data that you want to enrich. So this is our data input file. And I'm going to click on that. And that's where the World Cup teams CSV file is. And I click Open. And it gives me a preview. Here's what the file looks like. It's just one column of, I didn't put all 48 teams in here, but just a list of teams that are playing. So you know essentially what that looks like, the input file. And then I don't need to check this. We're going to say we don't have an input header because we don't. And here's just a sample showing a preview of the teams. And I'm going to click Next. And then my input lookup value, if I had 5 columns in this data file, maybe I would have column 3 would be the input file. But here I've just got 1 column, so that's going to be our lookup value. And I'm just going to click Next. And in this data set, we've got a custom data definition. Again, it gives me the topic file. The format is a CSV file. And the new output columns that we're going to get here in the lookup value is column 1. And that's pretty much it. Now we can take our data set and enrich it with that custom data file that we just created. So I'll click Run Enrichment, and there it goes. Okay, we're going to be processing here. It can take a few seconds because it is going out and getting a lot of data to build the data set that we are creating. Okay, and then there we go. So you can see the first column here is the names of the countries, and you can see it in text form. Now, of course, you could open it as a text file, and that'll bring the whole thing up as a CSV text file you can look at. You can save it, so you can load it into Excel or Google Sheets or whatever it is you're doing, with your data. You might want to save it for use as part of a pipeline or whatever it is. But of course, this is just a fun example. I can click Spreadsheet View, and I can actually, if I want to see the data a little bit more structured, I can do that here. I can rearrange some of the column sizes here and so forth. Let's make this a little bit bigger on the side so we can read it a little bit more. There we go. Okay, whoops. Back to that spreadsheet view. Okay, well, you get the idea. I can make this much bigger, and then I can widen this out. Yeah, make it a little bit easier to read, so you can see the coaches. The last World Cup appearance for South Africa is 2010. It's been 1998 for Scotland. 2014 for Ivory Coast, eliminated in group stage. Australia made the round of 16. They lost 2-1 to Argentina. Best player, you can see these various results here. It's interesting for Spain. It's got Lamine Yamal, Kylian Mbappe. Anyway, that's the general idea. And again, I can close this. We can save our results. I could run it against another data file. The idea is here, we've created external data that we've then appended to our own input data file that allows us to create any type of data set that we can possibly imagine in structured data form for use in any application, whether it's a spreadsheet, an analytics tool, loaded into our CRM or marketing application, or used as part of an AI process. There's no limit to the data that you can get, retrieve, create, and make use of. Again, if you'd like to try this in action, you can go get your API key at Interzoid.com, www.interzoid.com, or send any questions you might have to support@interzoid.com. And as you can see, it's pretty easy to, once you get the hang of this, to start creating the data that you can then append to your own input data. Thanks, and look forward to watching the World Cup.